That's what day it is. Good morning. Today is Thursday, October 17th, 2024, and welcome to today's regular meeting of the California Fair Political Practices Commission. Ms. Linker, will you please take roll?
Commissioner Baker?
Here.
Commissioner Wood?
Here.
Chair Silver?
Here. Excellent. Well, let's start with item number 1, and that's going to be public comment for items not on today's agenda. Do we have any public comment for items not on today's agenda? Okay, hearing and seeing none, let's move on to item 2, and that's going to be approval of the commission minutes from the September meeting. Commissioners, do we have any changes to the minutes that you'd like to propose?
See none?
Seeing none, I move to, do we have a motion to approve?
Sure. Motion to approve.
Do we have a second? I guess I can second. I'll second. Ms. Linker?
Commissioner Baker?
Oh,
Aye.
public comment. My apologies. Hearing and seeing none, Ms. Linker?
Commissioner Baker?
Aye.
Commissioner Wood?
Aye.
Chair Silver?
Aye.
The motion passes.
Excellent. Okay, let's now move on to our consent calendar. So we have items 3 through 5 and then item 7. Please note that item 6 has been removed from the agenda, and our chief enforcement can expand upon that as appropriate. So any other items that commissioners would like to remove from the consent calendar? And again, that is items 3 through 5 and then item number 7.
Request items 4 and 5. Quick
Okay,
questions. Thank
4
you.
and 5. Mr. Bainbridge, are we able to have general questions related to 4 and 5 without taking them off the consent calendar, or should we just go ahead and do that?
You can leave them on the calendar and take questions if you want. If you want to take separate action on them, they need to be removed from the consent calendar.
Okay.
I don't, I think my mic is on. I don't intend to take separate action, but I did have a question or two. Thank you.
Excellent. Okay, well,
Appreciate
let's go ahead and invite Enforcement Chief James Lindsay up to the table here. Good morning, Mr. Lindsay.
Morning.
James Lindsay, Enforcement Chief.
And then before we touch on 4 and 5, could you just give us an update on item 6 that was pulled?
Yes, item 6 has a settlement in place. We did not receive the settlement documents and check until the day after posting, but we will be presenting that next month as a stipulation item.
Excellent. It looks like that was a default. So now we're moving on to a stipulated settlement.
That's correct, as will occur sometimes in the pre-notice process. We will get some communication suddenly from a respondent, and sometimes that works out into a perfected settlement, much like item 4 we'll be talking about.
Excellent. Okay, go ahead, Commissioner Baker.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and Commissioner Wood for allowing me to do this. I had, I think, two and a half questions. One is, this is a matter where they used a reputational website, a reputational fixing website. And I saw how primarily on page 6, there's a discussion of the role that played in the facts. I wanted to understand a little bit better if the candidate had not had surplus funds, so this is more of a policy or legal question. If they hadn't had surplus funds and they had an open committee that was not surplus, or they were in office, would the use of campaign funds for a reputational correcting site weighed any differently, been not a violation because they're out there trying to protect their reputation as a sitting candidate or as a sitting elected official? That's less the facts of this matter. It was more of a policy question for me because it did weigh here, and I'd like to understand that better.
Well, I'll first say that that's not a fact pattern that I've thought much about because it's not what happened in this particular case. It might be a question that's better posed to other people than the enforcement chief, to be frank with you. It would have created, I think, a different analysis. Obviously, if they weren't surplus funds, we wouldn't be looking at them as an improper use of surplus funds, but it would still need to be for a political, legislative, governmental purpose and related to the candidacy. It's still a personal benefit, regardless of the timing. And so we would look at it as to whether or not it directly related to one of those purposes. And I don't know if the analysis would have been ultimately different or not, but if anybody else would like to answer or partially answer that question. Happy to do that.
If that's all right with the chair, if I can direct that, and I'm putting Mr. Bainbridge on the spot a little bit. I don't, we don't know if there's been advice letters on this without a little heads up, but the way it played out here, it seemed to be sort of both that it was personal benefits, so not as clear a governmental, political, or legislative purpose, especially because it wasn't surplus funds. So it's kind of mixed a little bit. What can you tell me about if this candidate had been, if a candidate is open account, not surplus, or they're a sitting elected official, does that use of reputational protecting websites have potentially more of a political purpose, for example?
I haven't read this closely. I don't want to comment. If I had advanced notice of this question, I could have had a better answer for you.
Fair.
It's something we can come back with and look at and give you an answer.
And I can follow up separately. It's the first time we've seen it, I think, at the commission level, and I'd be grateful for knowing, because I can't imagine there haven't been other people, candidates, perhaps not with surplus funds, who've thought about how they protect their reputation, especially after they feel like they've been attacked. This is a different pattern. The next question is, what would the maximum have been had no counts been consolidated and matters used as aggravating instead of a separate count?
Well, our default paperwork initially and in the pre-notice indicated that there were 13 counts for a total of $65,000 as a possible outside range for this particular matter. It's important to note that the misuse of campaign funds, surplus funds, comes in 5 different categories. We have the reputational services, we have sports memorabilia purchases, we have money that went to 2 alleged campaign volunteers, and we have money that was sent to the former spouse of Mr. Caserta, who also was listed as the treasurer of the committee initially. She was listed as, I think, as the entire time, but it was clear from the evidence that Mr. Caserta was acting as the treasurer, at least at the time in question. So we have 5 different areas of improper use. The default, which was legitimate, but it created a scenario where we charged both the misuse of funds and misuse of surplus funds. So, and then in the issue of the payments to Ms. Soares, we, on a 3rd count, we included improper payment to a spouse. So as the default was written and as we could have presented, we had doubling and sometimes tripling of counts that were largely for the same type of activity, even though there were clear violations, separate violations. In the process of settlement, we ended up consolidating those counts into 1 count for each of those types of improper uses. And so that's how you get from the $65,000, which would have been that outer range, to the $22,500 that's in the stipulation that you have before you today.
Thank you. I appreciate the explanation and understanding the full perspective. I support this settlement. I'm glad to see it come to a settlement. I think it's an example of how long a matter may take if you have either lack of cooperation, which wasn't so much highlight here, but just very poor record keeping. And I think I just note for the public, as we contemplate our workload and as we've had a really strong initiative to complete cases in a timely manner, these are examples of ones that, for the reasons that are somewhat outside our control, or your team's control, they take longer. And I'm glad that this is coming to a conclusion. I appreciate knowing more about that context. So thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Yeah, those are excellent points, Commissioner Baker. I agree with you on the reputational software. I think that's something that comes up for candidates.
Yeah.
So I think that's something that we can perhaps touch on at a later date.
Thank you.
As well as the circumstances of this case. I think it's a great example of how our pre-notice procedures have worked. This was, if I'm correct, this was pre-notice default.
Yes.
And then we had the individual come to the table. The same was the case in with item number 6, correct?
That's correct.
So,
And also we had a pre-notice matter. It's 2 matters, companion matters last month that have also generally or is on the road to settlement as well. So we have had some success with pre-notice matters recently.
Well, that's an excellent result, in my opinion, for, various different reasons, including that we get, the payment in full at the time of settlement, right? Also, just in terms of general due process, I really appreciate the fact that you and your staff are going above and beyond to give these public officials, candidates, et cetera, that are subject to these default proceedings, as much notice as possible so that they can take responsibility, be accountable for their violations, and ultimately come and settle where a violation occurred. Excellent. Well, do we want to move on to 5? Go ahead, Commissioner Baker.
Thank you again, Mr. Chair and colleagues. This was another one where I would like to know, just kind of offers perspective, how many counts would have been possible. And because I think there is a mention in the stipulation that there were some that were aggravating factors versus,
I'm sorry, did we move to number?
I'm sorry.
Oh, no, you're all right. I just
We
want to make
moved
sure
right
that I'm
along.
with you.
This is the one with the $100 bills.
Okay, yeah. Yes, there is a footnote.
Might be my reading problem. Here we go.
Yeah, I believe it's footnote 17. There were some 24-hour reports and some reporting violations relating to Form 460s that were used as aggravation only in this particular case.
So that would have been, it could have been considerably more. And I understand that we're putting, for the ones that you are charging, you're putting it at the highest amount.
Right.
I agree with that. And just want to understand, again, when we see this aggregation of claims, it's nice to know when it's a count and when it's not. Another one I agree with, I just want to say thank you for charging the full amount, or not charging the full amount, recommending a penalty for the full amount for the counts that you have.
Yes, you're welcome. And in this instance, it is important to note that even though there were some problems with those reporting and those aggravating violations, they were all reported before the election in that particular instance, and we do view that a little bit differently.
Thank you. Those were all my very minor questions. Thanks.
Excellent. And some general feedback. I noticed that you linked to the comparable case on our website. I think that's incredibly helpful for the public to see what the circumstances of other comparable cases were. So I'm absolutely supportive of that. In terms of the rest of the consent calendar, I think those are all the questions I had. Commissioner Baker?
Yep. No other question. Move to approve the consent calendar with the, knowing that item 6 was removed.
Commissioner Wood, any questions or comments?
None. I really appreciated that conversation, Commissioner Baker. Again, just I always see eye to eye. So anyway, happy to second this.
Excellent. Any public comment on the consent calendar? Go ahead. Go ahead. Good morning.
Good morning. My name is James Rowan, and I would like to speak on item number 4. I actually worked for Dominic Caserta when he ran for the legislature. And one of the things I did with Dominic Caserta was go after websites that attacked his reputation. So Mr. Caserta has been doing this for quite a number of years. I worked for Ed McGovern, who was a consultant for Mr. Caserta. Mr. Caserta has a almost Trumpian view of Santa Clara politics, and he's really changed the nature of Santa Clara politics to being highly negative. He used this reputation website mentioned in the FPPC complaint to not only attack the mayor of Santa Clara on behalf of the San Francisco 49ers, but he went after a blog that questioned him. Now, the blog in question, the attack, has got a bad reputation. It had a poster that talked about wishing someone had monkeypox, which, as you know, is quite disgusting. But the fact of the matter is that Dominic Caserta, with the San Francisco 49ers, has used campaign funds like they're using in the president election to attack candidates. Highly negative negative comments. And it is good that the FPPC wants to step in because, as you know, Jed York is currently being the same thing. I wish that the FPPC would step in and do something protect Santa Clara politics, the mayor of Santa Clara, and the rest of the people who want to question the public. Thank you.
Well, thank you for paying such close attention to this matter. We appreciate that, and thank you for your public comment. Do we have any additional public comment? Okay. Ms. Linker?
Commissioner Baker,
Aye.
Commissioner Wood,
Aye.
Chair Silver.
Aye.
The motion passes.
Excellent. Okay, we have 3 pre-notice defaults, and that's going to be items 8 through 10. These are informational items, so we don't have to vote on them. One that I wanted to highlight was item number 10. So it looks like that one is a 2023 case. I just wanted to recognize enforcement for the timeliness of this one. It looks like it moved through the system quite quickly. Are you able to share generally the outreach efforts that we make to respondents before an item goes to a pre-notice default?
Yes, the process would be that when we open a case, we would make some outreach efforts in various ways, typically initially through intake staff. And then we will go through the process if we're not getting responses or the activity that we need. We will then go to probable cause proceedings. They will be served with probable cause paperwork and given an opportunity to respond in some fashion to the probable cause proceedings. Usually in a default situation, that means they probably haven't responded, haven't requested a conference, haven't provided a response. Once we receive a probable cause finding from the legal division, we will then be directed to issue an accusation, which we will do. We will then have to personally serve the accusation on that individual. So they're getting contact. But in these instances, we're not receiving any response. With the accusation, they have 15 days to submit a notice of defense requesting an administrative hearing. If they do not do so, then we will begin engaging in the default process, provide a first notice letter, and put the matter on the agenda for pre-notice. Once that occurs, they will get a second notice, and then the following month typically, especially if we haven't received any response, we will have already had the paperwork drawn up and prepared to put forward before the commission for a final decision on that default.
That's helpful. Thank you, Mr. Lindsay. As someone who in their previous role used to help staff file their Form 700s and fill them out, it pains me to see this sort of non-disclosure and non-filing happen and just ignoring this requirement. I almost want to drive down to Fillmore and try to convince this person to file their statements, but it sounds like we have not been able to get a hold of them despite your efforts and the staff's efforts. So thanks for walking us through that whole process. Any other questions or comments, commissioners? Commissioner Baker.
I did, and it has to do with in prior years here on the commission, either through regulation or maybe a change in training, we were connecting with filing officers to ask them to try to be sure to get a personal email or personal contact after somebody left office. And I'm wondering if this was a situation where we didn't get that from them, and are there any problems with contacting the person? Because we don't get the details of what contact efforts is made in pre-notice like this. And I'm wondering if there's anything that we did in regulation or training that made sure that we get private information so we can have the ability to reach out to them.
We don't always get great information from the filing officer, and if there is an indication that we don't have proper information, then we have our investigative staff use the tools at their disposal to get good information. If it's gone as far as it has here, we have received good information at some point, whether it's from the filing officer or from our own investigation staff, because we've made contact and we've made the personal contacts that are required under the law.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Excellent. Any other comment, Commissioner Wood? Nope. Okay. Why don't we move on to item 11 under our general items?
Thank you.
So that's going to be our legislative update from Senior FPPC Legislative Counsel Nakano. Good morning, Ms. Nakano.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, Commissioners.
Right.
All right, I've got a shorter update for you today on the final results of bills from this year. 13 bills amending the Political Reform Act and 1 bill amending Section 1090 of the Government Code relating to conflicts in government contracting were passed by the legislature and signed by the governor. Of those bills, 4 were commission-initiated and sponsored. I'll note that the bills that did not pass this year are listed at the end of the legislation report with a brief note as to where each bill stalled in the process. And as I mentioned last month, I'll be back next month to present legislation ideas for the Commission's feedback and consideration for the upcoming legislative year. And I'm happy to go over any of the bills that the Commission would like to, but absent that, that concludes my update.
Excellent. Well, I just want to again thank you and the legal division, Mr. Bainbridge, everybody for the hard work this past session. Did an excellent job. There were tons of PRA bills, far more than I remember in the past. You're really on top of them, and I think we ushered in some very important changes to the law, including the e-filing requirement, several others. So, job well done. One additional item, just for those of you watching on YouTube, if you have any legislative proposals, please reach out. You really want to be as collaborative as possible. If there's something that you think can be fixed in the Political Reform Act or something related to the FPPC, please reach out to Mr. Bainbridge, to Ms. Nakano, myself, whoever. We definitely want those ideas. So thank you. Any other comments from commissioners? Commissioner Baker?
Thank you. I thank you also for the great work this year. And I note that the bill regarding the use of campaign funds for mental health, which we talked quite a bit about, and I don't know that we were able as a commission to reach a consensus on, but I know that you put a lot of work into that with the folks who were sponsoring it and asking for support, and it was vetoed by the governor. I haven't looked at the veto message, but I think it's worth highlighting that you did put a lot of time into helping entities, at least understanding the law and ways to potentially write it. And just appreciate our colleagues listening carefully to the arguments that were made on that. It's rare that we haven't been able to reach consensus on bills sometimes, and I'm grateful for how we addressed it, but you still were very engaging with the proponents, and just want to highlight that. Thank you.
Yeah, good job, team. Like, it's, we agree on most things and not everything. And Lindsay, Senior Legal Counsel Nakano, your help with the advocates was, really useful here. So thank you very much. And just for all that you've done. Thank you.
My pleasure. Thank you.
And I think last thing to mention, there's several different legislators who are terming out this year. Just want to thank them for working with us and their service to the state of California. In particular, I want to thank Senator Glazer for being an advocate for transparency and all the other principles of the Political Reform Act. And I wish him well in his future endeavors, and I'm sure the commissioners feel the same. So excellent. Any public comment on the legislative update? Go ahead.
Good morning, Chair Silver and Commissioners. This is David Carnahan, Sunnyvale City Clerk. I have some concerns over how the public is going to access Form 700s filed by local 87-200 filers after January 1st, when the data exchange between local agencies' FPPC-approved filing systems and the FPPC system is discontinued. The FPPC's disclosure docs does show the 87-200 filings from local elected officials and candidates for local office. It does not show 87-200 filings from local appointed officials such as city managers, city attorneys, finance directors, and planning commissioners. The public can currently access both of these filings from the elected and appointed 87-200 filers, typically from a local agency's public portal. So after the data exchange is discontinued, It's not clear to me how local agencies will know that an 87200 filer has submitted a Form 700. And then, more importantly than that, it's unclear how a member of the public is going to be able to view a Form 700 that's filed by an appointed 87200 filer, right? So currently on the FPPC system, we don't see the Planning Commission, the city manager, city attorney, finance director filings. And so we direct the public to the local agency to view those. So it's just unclear kind of where the public will be able to view those. And so it would be helpful for there to be some method for either those filings to show up on disclosure docs, or to have some kind of a reverse data exchange where if when an 87200 filing is made with FPPC, it either gets sent to the local filing officer or we're notified somehow, so that we don't have to go into disclosure docs on a periodic basis to find those, to make them public for the public to see. And Sunnyvale, and I would imagine most cities are really interested in working with commission staff to support public access to these filings, while also trying to minimize the administrative burden both on commission staff and local agency staff. And then taking up the chair's invitation, I'll tell you one thing that I would love to have fixed in FPPC regulations would be for the contribution, the 24-hour reports on a 497. If a contribution is a loan, that's not required to be reported on the Form 497. However, the generated 497 has the check if loan checkbox. So almost every election, I have filers that are trying to loan their committee money and they want to file the 497 in a timely manner, but they get hung up because the checkbox is there, but the rules don't require that box be checked. So the box can't be checked in an e-filing system. So that's just a tiny little thing for a local filing officer that I would love to see fixed somehow. And I really appreciate the opportunity to speak to the commission today. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much. I'm honestly so glad that you're engaging with us today. And that's excellent feedback for us as we navigate the rest of the election season. I hope we can stay engaged and respond to some of the concerns that you raised. One thing I would note is, like I said, this e-filing requirement was a top priority of the FPPC in getting it adopted. And as such, we are very enthusiastic about having a successful implementation of that requirement. And as part of that, and I think staff can further expand upon that. I don't know if today's meeting is the best venue for that, but if they feel appropriate, they can come up to the table. However, as part of that, what we're planning on doing is really blitzing all the local and state filing officers and filers to make sure that they understand that this new requirement is in place. So we're planning on doing a lot of educational efforts, right? So if you have not received the notice from us already related to this new requirement as a filing officer, you will soon. Secondly, as far as your technical concerns, you're correct. Please correct me if I'm wrong. We do not post those Form 700s on our website currently. However, we will after January 1st. Is my understanding.
Yeah, I can speak to that. Currently, certain positions are in our system that can be found by the public and others are not. This is a policy decision the commission has made. My understanding of the technology is we could make them all available to be viewed by the public through our system. But currently, certain levels of statements are not. So that would be a change the commission would want to make in terms of policy. Anyone looking for a statement that gets filed with us can simply email us at form700@fppc.ca.gov, and we'll get them a copy of the Form 700.
Excellent. Well, that's helpful. Go ahead, Commissioner Baker.
Thank you. Can you say more about what that policy is? I'm thinking of prior conversations about maybe staff, more staff level, but how much more detail can you provide us at this point?
I don't remember exactly what the cutoff is. I know electeds are all on there and available, but I'm not sure exactly at what level. It's based on position, of course, and so certain level positions are not available to the public on the system currently.
Yes, thank you. And perhaps appointeds, any do you know what the cutoff or policy's been in the past on appointeds?
I don't know. We obviously can get that to the commission for their consideration.
I think that may be worthwhile since this is all part of the implementation. We want to make sure if we need to change anything or weigh in as a commission on policy to reflect something we've cared a lot about. I
Absolutely.
would welcome that conversation. I had a second question, but I've forgotten what it is. So thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Wood,
No, all
any
good.
additional public comment on this one? Okay. Then let's go ahead and move on to the executive staff reports. We can start with the Enforcement Division. Mr. Lindsay.
Good morning again, James Lindsay, Enforcement Chief. There was a couple of things that I wanted to highlight from the report and give you some current updates that I'm sure that you'd be interested in. As you could see on page 2 of the report, complaints have gone significantly up due to the impending election. We received almost 200 complaints last month. I will tell you that we've already received that number so far in October. So complaints are very high, as you would imagine. The other thing I wanted to highlight is that we spend a lot of time talking about the policy directives, and specifically with respect to Policy Directive 1, which was the reduction of pre-2023 cases by 75%. That was achieved last month. At the end of last month, we had closed enough cases of that variety that the 75% had been achieved. And that's 3 months prior to the deadline that was sort of put out there. So I want to congratulate enforcement staff for implementing that as well as we have and achieving that particular directive. So if you have any other questions on anything, please ask. I just wanted to highlight those things.
Well, certainly on that point, that's amazing. That's great, given where we were at when those directives were adopted. The fact that enforcement was able to achieve that, especially going into an election year, that's just spectacular. I'm glad you could update that in the public on that point. Commissioner Baker? Yeah, the microphones are a little sticky.
Agree
today,
that
aren't
today
they?
my button, it must be a message that the heavens are telling me to stop pushing it. But I am grateful for that as well. And thank you for highlighting that. And congratulations to the team. I know the workload just continues. And it's we want to recognize that as well. So I appreciate that. I do have one question about Streamline. If we're able to.
Go ahead, Commissioner
Why are
Baker.
they so sticky? It's
I
not
don't
just me.
know.
I just want people to know. It's not just my microphone. We don't see lobbying reporting come up very much. And we've had quite a bit of conversation in the legislative context about what lobbyists, auditing lobby reports and otherwise. I noticed there is, it's on page 5 of the executive staff reports, there is a lobbying reporting matter that is in Streamline. Can you just say a little bit about, do you know how this one came up and how we found that?
I believe that this was a referral on lobbying. It's a 2021 case. We were receiving some referrals at that point in time, much more so than we have in recent years. Okay. But I believe that that's how this one particularly came out.
Thank you. I keep looking for those, and I'm sure we'll continue in our legislative conversation about what to do with lobbying audits. But I do notice that's one of the first times I've seen that pop up in Streamline, and appreciate the answer.
Sure.
Any public comment on the exec staff report for enforcement? Okay, excellent. Thank you, Mr. Lindsay.
Thank you.
Now we have Chief Shaw for the Audits and Assistance Division. Good morning, Chief Shaw.
Good morning. My report is as submitted for this month, but happy to answer any questions you may have.
Any questions concerning the audit report? Any public comment? Okay. Thank you, Ms. Shaw. Why don't we move on to Legal Division? Mr. Bainbridge.
We got 2.5 weeks to go. That's the, everyone's eyes on the prize, so busy
There's
answering
so
questions.
many people watching this who feel the same way.
But nothing to add.
I've got. Any public comment? Great. Let's move on to item number 4, or I should say, the fourth report, and that is Administration and Technology Division. Dr. Wang. Good morning.
Good morning. So my report will submit as it is, but I do have something to add regarding AB 1170 implementation. So AB 1170 require effective January 1st, 2025, Form 700 filed by public official for whom the commission is the filing officer shall be filed with the commission using the commission's electronic filing system. So we already sent out the first notification to filing official. We'll continue send multiple notification to the filer and the filing official from now to the end of December to make sure we have a smooth transition. So go back to the question about the website posting. So right now we only post a statement filed by elective official. So technical wise, can post all the statement, but this is a policy decision right now. Yeah, I'm happy to answer all the questions you have.
Thank you for that clarification. I really appreciate that your division's getting ahead of this and has already reached out to stakeholders on this.
Thank you.
Any comments on that? Commissioner Baker?
Not a comment on that, but thank you. The chart on April 2nd filings, it's Form 700, has under entity, this is a real rudimentary question, I'm sure. What is Keenan?
I wondered that as well.
It's on page 13 of the executive staff reports under item C.
So Keenan is 87500 Group N, which is a designated employee of more than one joint power insurance agency who elect to file multi-agency statement. So it's the section 87350 filer.
Good to know. Thank you very much.
And Keenan is very good at getting their staff to file.
Yeah,
too.
those are some
Super
good
outstanding
numbers.
Filers, and so is the legislature.
Yes.
Thank you.
So I also wanted to welcome 2 new employees. So we have Caitlin and Michelle. Happy to have you at the FPPC, and welcome. Welcome. So I believe that's it. Any additional comment, Dr. Wang?
No, I'm fine.
Excellent. Public comment? Okay. Perfect. Let's move on to item number 13. We have we have
Executive
our
Director.
executive director report.
Yes.
Go ahead.
Hello. I would like to have our communications director give us an update on some election-related PSAs that we do, as well as an update on some projects.
Good morning, Chair, Commissioners. Jay Waringa, Communications Director. First of all, we have re-engaged with our Laney College student working on the video project, so we're happy to report that. She's working on a project that especially Chloe's team helped put together on a video on You Lost, Now What? So we get a lot of questions on that, so we felt that would be a very good next video to put in their series. Our PSA campaign, as you may recall, we created a PSA a few years ago, basically saying, you see all these political ads, who's behind them, who's paying for it? Give us a call or an email, we'll help you find out. And we started that campaign. We ran it back in the primary. We started this fall one on Monday. It'll run through the day before elections, so hopefully by the next meeting we'll have the metrics and the data on who was watching. Based on the last time, we got a lot of fans in the Central Valley. We have a lot of senior fans, and a lot of people check that out at late at night after 9 o'clock. So people with hopefully educating themselves on their downtime. And that is the latest on the PSA campaign.
Excellent. Were there any other comments? One comment that I wanted to make is I just wanted to update the public on development. Our communications director, Jay Waringa, who you just heard from, he is going to be, unfortunately for us, he's going to be leaving us. But he's leaving us for an excellent position, and I'm just so happy for him, and I'm so grateful for the excellent work that he's done at the FPBC for years and years and years now. You're a fixture here at the FPBC, regardless of whether you're here physically, right? Jay was here when I first started years and years ago in the enforcement division. I'm so glad that I got to work with him as chair, and the way that you've been able to communicate to the public the excellent work of this agency is just so unique, and I just have a great appreciation for it and your skill. So thank you so much for that. I assume commissioners have similar comments as well to share.
I do. I was so sorry to hear that you're leaving, but it's sometimes folks graduate to a new next exciting endeavor, and we're happy to see that that is what you're doing. Thank you for the very hard work, and also just an appreciation for how difficult it is when you're the public face in many ways to daily questions about, is this case, why this, and can you tell us if this is a violation, or why didn't you do that? And couldn't you see that this is a witness, or so on? There's so many questions that come to Jay and the media team to try to extract a position one way or the other that can not keep the agency unbiased or appearance of being unbiased. And you're that public face, I think, much more than the chair or the commissioners, because you're the one that gets the call and all the questions. And I thank you for that and keeping that neutral appearance. And also, while still not suppressing the ability to get useful information to folks' hands, which is, it wasn't always, no, there's nothing to see here, can't say anything. It was, but here's on our website where we have information to self-help and get what you need. And that's a trick, and especially when we see how many calls that you get, and I'm sure emails during the day. So whoever comes in this position next better be ready to meet that standard. But we're grateful that you met it, and I've enjoyed working with you and wish you all the best.
If I can just add on, Jay, it's been really fun, and you've done a tremendous job, and you leave big shoes to fill. And I hope you'll be in touch when you're on campus, because I know you come down sometimes. So best of luck in your new endeavors.
Excellent. Well, thank you again, Jay. I'm glad we get to keep you for a little bit longer. Public comment? Hearing and seeing none, why don't we now move on to item number 13, commissioner comments and proposed future agenda items. Anything to touch on there? Commissioner Baker?
Oh, just, it was this, in the last meeting, we had inquired about potentially getting an update on the rules related to, and it's in the minutes, on political, when something is political engagement or advocacy on the part of a governmental agency. I didn't know what rough timeline we might have that on, if it's before the end of the year, if it's January. So I was just going to inquire. We may not have an answer to that. It can perhaps follow up at the next meeting, if that's not the meeting where that presentation is coming to us. Thank you.
Okay. Any public comment on that item? Perfect. Then I will move to adjourn. Do I have a second?
Second.
Excellent. Ms. Linker?
Commissioner Baker?
Aye.
Commissioner Wood?
Aye.
Chair Silver?
Aye.
The motion passes.
Shortest meeting in history. Thank you, guys.
Yeah, that's a record pace.
Bye-bye.